Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to all the participants. Thank you for joining with us again. How was your lunch? Everyone? Good? Alhamdulillah. For Babatunde, is it morning there, right?
Yes, it is morning. Yeah.
Have you had your breakfast yet?
So, good afternoon there to everyone. I hope you enjoyed the lunch.
Thank you, we did. Good morning to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so without further ado, the floor is yours, Prof.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
So we're all welcome to this Breakout 2 of Saturday, 28th March, 2026, on the 14th Asia Pacific Conference on Environment and Behavior, taking place in Kuching. So I believe that the presenters for this session are ready. So each presenter will have 10 minutes to clearly express and present to us, while other participants, both in person and online, will be ready to make contributions. And please be ready with your questions for each presenter, so we can do that in 5 minutes. So we have, I think we have 5 presentations for this session. The first one is CSME001. Is Iman there?
Yes, good morning and good afternoon at the same time. I'm here.
Okay, that's great. She's going to present to us on resist deconstructing colonial narratives through female-centered Moroccan TikTok content.
Thank you.
We're all ears.
Thank you. Good afternoon to our friends in Kuching. Good morning to you, Professor Emmanuel. Here in Morocco, it is also about 7:30 a.m. for us as well.
Okay.
So allow me very quickly to share my PPT.
Okay, please do.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Oh.
Yes, you shared it earlier. Why did
Yeah, then it was not working. Just give me, sorry. Just 1 more minute,
okay,
please.
The presentation is with Professor Fatima Zora Iflahin, but Iman is the one presenting. Is Prof online?
No, the professor is not here.
Okay, it's not here.
So, should work. Okay. Does it work now? Great.
Yes, it works perfectly.
So, my name is Iman Qarawi, and as I've already said, I'm from Morocco. I'm a doctoral student at Qadaiyyah University in Marrakesh. And today I'll be presenting my article, Scroll, Speak, Resist, Deconstructing Colonial Narratives Through Female-Centered TikTok Content, Moroccan TikTok content to be exact. So this is a very quick look at the table of contents, moving right to my introduction. So my article is set in Morocco, and it looks specifically to how and examines how Moroccan women are using TikTok to challenge Western-centric feminist narratives. So the main objective here is to really learn about localized feminism in Morocco and to see how it fights back against the whole idea of Western feminism as Muslim women being victims. And how do I do this, particularly in this article, is by looking and exploring how music, visual aesthetics, and written texts are used to express local feminism, particularly on TikTok. So the literature review, so we're coming from the idea that Western feminism has portrayed and still to some extent is portraying women from the South, and particularly here Muslim women, as victims needing of rescue, while we have local scholars like Fatima Mernisi who fight against this idea and say that women have power and have held powerful and influential roles in society. So we're looking particularly at social media, and this is the research gap, is that we're looking at TikTok not as only an entertaining platform, but as a new platform, a new media platform to decolonize feminist expression, because TikTok has proven to create participatory spaces for feminist expression and activism worldwide. Of course, there is harassment and surveillance in social media, but this article sort of focuses on the positive side of TikTok. So our methodology here is that we're doing a qualitative content analysis of 3 Moroccan TikTok pages, 5 posts from each page. So the videos were selected both for popularity and relevance to the study objectives, where we made sure that every video is featuring a woman. That is to say that the content is about a woman, and it is a woman, a Moroccan woman, who's talking or creating this content. So the analytical categories focus, as I said, on visual aesthetics. We're looking here at gaze, clothing, symbols, and editing. And on the written text, we're looking at caption, quotes, and memes. And on music and audio, which is tone, humor, and some empowering sounds. Ethically, TikTok, as of today, allows publicly available content to be used. So I've taken I've taken these people and I've put their names and their content online. So the first influencer is at Amazigh Cultures, and let's talk a little bit about what it means to be an Amazigh person and the Amazigh people. So the Amazigh people are the first settlers in North Africa. We call them the first people of North Africa. And though they are the indigenous people of Morocco, they make a significant percentage of Moroccan. And as of late, as in this past decade, there has been a huge movement of the Amazigh people. They've been given their own holiday for their new year. There is now Amazigh language has become an official language in Morocco, which is the only North African country to do so. And even in some schools, Amazigh is being taught in primary school. Because of this movement of reviving the Amazigh culture, at least in front of the Moroccan country, there's also been a movement to talk about the Amazigh women and give them back their story, sort of, because the Amazigh have been called the Berbers, which comes from the word berber, which comes in French, which is barbaric. And so for the past decades, or really the past century, there's been created this story about how the Amazigh people are barbaric. They were in need of rescue. They were in need of colonization. And so this post looks particularly at Amazigh women throughout history. And here we have the oldest banking system in the world, which was created in Morocco, which to this day is being managed by an old woman. We have Amazigh women talking about tattoos and how it empowers them. We have female warriors, for example, the story of Aisha Kandisha. So Aisha Kandisha, she's this Amazigh warrior who is very famous in Morocco for fighting the Portuguese colonizers. But this strong woman, because of she is so strong, she now lives as a ghost story to scare off young children. And so this story fights back. Why is it that a strong woman has now become a witch, a ghost to scare our young children in Morocco? Of course, this is a story that has been told to me and has been used to scare me as a child as well. So moving on to the second TikTok influencer, there is still a lot of localized feminism, but it is different. If the first TikTok focused on retelling women's histories from the past, this TikToker is focusing on celebrating women's Moroccan identity today. So this Vera talks about current issues in Morocco and fights them back using something very interesting, which is she's using irony, she's using anger, she's using humor, she's using sound, she's using memes to, on the one hand, fight back, but on the other hand, she's really appealing to a much younger audience. So, for example, in post three, we have her, she's fighting back at the idea of, so there is this whole story about Moroccan women being witches. And so there is this audio in the back that basically says, I am no Moroccan witch. And if you think I'm a Moroccan witch, you can always come and fight me. So there is some anger involved. While in post 5, she's talking to the double standard, because in Morocco, if a man marries outside of his country, he's being celebrated. Well, if a woman marries outside of her country, she's being shamed for it. And she's called a gold digger and all kinds of names. Now, again, we have our last influencer. So this influencer, as opposed to the other 2 influencers, is actually a production agency. So there is a lot more structure to their TikTok pages, and they also have a lot more views. But what's interesting is that this platform has, a huge number of followers that are all very young people. And so what they do is that they entertain, but they also educate. So in the first post, we have a very famous comedian who made a rape joke, and this woman is calling for him to be cancelled, and he has been cancelled. In post 2, we have this young woman who must be in her early 20s, who's talking about feminism and how it should be localized in Morocco and how we should learn from the Amazigh. And what's interesting is also what she's wearing, because she's wearing she's looking very modern, but really she's wearing a Moroccan-inspired top. It's inspired from Moroccan traditional wear. And post 3, 4, and 5 is explaining. Sorry?
This your presentation is so interesting that I could go on forever. But you have
thank
3
you
minutes.
so much.
But you have 3 minutes more.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Okay.
So post 3, 4, and 5 talks about the Mudawana, and the Mudawana is the family law. What's kind of interesting about the family law is it's the only law in Morocco that still uses religion to back its claim, but at the same time, it is the only law that gives women rights or takes women's rights. And so, just as of late, there is been a change in the Mudawana, and of course, there is this whole idea that men feel like their rights have been taken back from them, etc., etc. And so this post kind of really explains what are these rights, and it tries to explain to the people that we're only giving rights to women, we're not taking rights back from men. So very quickly over my discussion. So here this paper sort of proves that TikTok is doing a good job of giving Moroccan women a platform to talk about themselves, but not only talk about themselves, to talk about their culture and to create a feminism that is true to them, that is not taken, or that might be inspired from the West, but that is true to the Moroccan culture and to what is happening currently. But what's interesting is that they're doing it in very different ways. So one is, as I said, sort of retelling histories. One is using humor, and one is educating its followers. So this is my conclusion. And for my limitation, I would like to say that there is a social media bias, as I have focused on the positive side of new media. And it is, unfortunately, a limited scope. But this limited scope has allowed for a deeper analysis of these influencers, and has given us a deeper idea of what is currently happening in Moroccan TikTok today. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, please ask them.
All right, Iman. Thank you for that Moroccan story from TikTok, from the point of view of women, and
yes.
the decolonizing effect of feminism, and really putting Moroccan women through influencers on the world stage by TikTok. That's really wonderful. Are there contributions or questions from the audience and other participants so we can take them. But while we're waiting for other participants, I just want to know whether these influencers, whether they are mostly followed by women or they are also followed by men.
Yes, so I've actually done, I didn't include it here, but I've done sort of like this social media, what do we call it? It counts the followers from men to women ratio. And what I found is that the first and second influencers, because they only talk about women, they have a much, much bigger percentage of women followers. And so as a consequence, their comments are heavily positive. So it's very, very positive comments, barely any negative comments. Because the last page, the last TikTok page is a media production agency, which means that their content is not, all of their content is not revolved around women. They have some content about, you know, everyday Moroccan life. They have almost a similar percentage of men to female followers, but this also puts them in a situation where these posts, especially the post related to the Mudawana, because the family law, because it's very sensitive, has very mixed reviews with a lot of hate. And of course, there are women who, there are women who hate on this type of content. It does exist, and vice versa is true. Men who, you know, support this type of content. But generally, there is this idea of, unfortunately, with the rise of feminism, there is the rise of misogyny. So there is this idea of men versus women that is becoming a reality online of, you know, who is the better gender in a sense. Unfortunately.
Wow. So now in this context that you brought these influencers to limelight, you too, you are bringing them to limelight now, although they are already in the limelight through TikTok. So what are you going to do next about this study? You know, considering these diverse opinions and contrasting
Yes.
opinions, are you going to walk
So
in that direction more or what?
So actually, because this article I've done a little bit earlier this year, it actually sparked a question for me where I decided to look at YouTube from men's side. So I have an article that I wrote that has not been published yet, that looks at, you know, why is there this hate? And so I looked at a number of YouTubers, and I found that a lot of male YouTubers are creating a lot of hate against women. And these people have a lot of followers that are men and women. So I feel like as much as we have content that, you know, is elevating women's empowerment, we also have content that is falsely elevating men's empowerment. And I've talked about how because men, because of the current, what's currently happening, they're also feeling inferior, and so they are watching this kind of channels to give them back what they think is going to give them back their pride. So honestly, there, you know, the issue is very, very difficult to treat, because it's like, what can I do? The idea is you have to have it, for example, a YouTuber or a male YouTuber or male TikToker or male that is going to be from both sides. And with the rise, I believe, with the rise of these type of followers, and again, these type of followers exist, and these type of followers are famous in Morocco. Namely, there is this fitness YouTuber who's very, very well liked in Morocco, and has this feminist mindset. But even if he's well liked, and even if he's a feminist, and even if he talks about women's rights, he's also being ridiculed at the same time because of his ideas and because of his background as someone who comes from a rich family. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Okay.
It's
All right. From the audience and other presenters, are there comments for Iman about this paper? If there's none, in the lighter mood, I just want to ask, are you a feminist?
Yes,
I said
you
in the
can.
lighter mood, are you a feminist?
Yes, I am.
Oh, really? All right. Of course, there's nothing. I just wanted to confirm,
Yes, thank
with the
you.
direction. Yeah. So
No problem.
we look forward to all these stories, interesting stories from Morocco in the next conference. And
Thank you.
I
Inshallah.
think it's a very interesting thing to do because I mean everybody is online and we need to be
Yes.
critical and to be
Mm,
analyzing and
mm,
synthesizing what is
yes,
really online. And I think
exactly. Exactly.
is very interesting. So thank
Exactly.
you very much for that
Thank you so much.
fascinating presentation. Mm.
Thank you.
All right. Let's look at the second presentation, paper 7 by Dr. Huraiza Ashad. Is Dr. Huraiza there?
So today I'm actually representing my other colleague, Prof. Faiga, Prof. Faiga, and also Dr. Siti Nadia, and Dr. Nur Shahida, and also Dr. Hidayatu from Indonesia. And together we have my students, Ms. Sharifah Nurshwani. So I want to present the part of my research. This is actually my research under the Fundamental Research Grant Scheme, FRGS, and this is a funded by the MOHE. The title is Embedding Facilities Management Epistemology into Mutawali Competencies Training Module towards the Sustainable Worker Facade Performance. So basically, this research is actually trying to propose the body of knowledge of facilities management towards enhancing the sustainability of the wakaf operation. Okay, for the introduction, what is actually wakaf? So wakaf is actually some people call it as an endowment. So endowment, wakaf is similar, the practice, the practice of once we wakaf, we register our property, our building as a wakaf property, we cannot sold, we cannot mortgage, we cannot transfer the property. So the property must be sustained, managed to give the benefit for the ummah. That's the basic concept of the wakaf. So historically, wakaf has been performed in the form of mosques, the madrasah, the hospital, the libraries, and to give the benefits of the social, economics, for the benefit of the ummah. And the wakaf has reached the peak of the contribution to the ummah since the Prophet and also the companions. However, in Malaysia, based on the previous studies, it shows that most of the wakaf properties is under performance, meaning it's not properly managed, not properly managed to sustain the values and also in terms of the functionality of the property. Okay. So these are the things, or these are the picture that always representing what's the wakaf, wakaf property. Sometimes wakaf is the property which is under maintenance. The conditions of the property is not properly managed, not properly maintained. These are the image of the wakaf property normally. But indeed, actually, the property is actually exists in the form of the hotels and also the commercial properties. The hotel, the wakaf hotel in Malaysia, for example, Hotel Sri Warisan, Hotel Sri Warisan, Hotel Putri Bay, Hotel Grand Putri, Damai Beach Resort. These are the wakaf hotel which is developed and managed using the wakaf fund, and these are the collaboration project under the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri. So actually, the wakaf properties has the potential. It's not actually about the property, but how the property is managed and who is managed the properties. That's the issues of the management. And this is come to the problem statement. Okay, the problem statement is actually based on the previous research. It shows that the limited competencies among of the wakaf managers. So it called as a mutawali. Mutawali is a wakaf manager who is responsible to manage and to maintain the property. But they have a limited knowledge of the how to manage the properties. Normally, the mutawali's background is the religious knowledge, the sharia, the legal, but not in terms of the how to manage the property, how to project the cost of the life cycle costing, the management, and so on and so forth. That's why the issues of the management of the wakaf property normally relate to the underperformance, underutilizations of the benefits, and that's the main problem. And the research question arise here is we try to actually embed the property, the facilities management knowledge. What is the facilities management epistemology to be embedded into the mutawali competencies training module, and we try to enhance the sustainable of the wakaf performance. And from this research question, we derive on the research objective. We try to explore what is the research management epistemology to be embedded to the development of the training module to enhance the sustainable performance of the wakaf assets. And this is the part of the literature review where we try to understand what is the facilities management. Actually, this is the body of knowledge which integrate the people and the process and also the place. The place meaning the building. So all the integration, three integration, the people, the process, and also the place, we have to integrate to make sure that the building and the property itself has effective and effectiveness of the performance. That's the important part. And when we try to link to the wakaf property and mutawali is, the mutawali is actually performing or perform their roles in line with the facilities management. Meaning the mutawali is responsible to manage and also to maintain the property. And another thing that always they are not, they're trying to avoid especially is actually the mutawali is responsible to enhance the value of the property. That is the lack of in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their performance of wakaf property. Okay, basically these are the administrative or administration level of the wakaf properties in Malaysia. All the wakaf property in Malaysia is under the responsibilities of the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri. So actually the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri is act as a mutawali. So the first mutawali is Majlis Agama Islam Negeri, but the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri can appoint another party as an institutional mutawali, or they can engage the corporation to act as a mutawali. So this comes yes.
You only have 3 minutes more.
Okay. And this comes the theoretical, the conceptual framework where I try to link the roles of mutawali, and when they perform the roles, they have to have the competencies towards sustainable the wakaf asset performance. Okay. So this is the methodology. I try to actually this is not quantitative. Actually this is qualitative. I try to explore, get insight from the mutawali, and to answer all the research question here. And from the data analysis, I collect the data among 7 mutawali. So this mutawali is comprised from the government mutawali, corporate mutawali, and also the institutional mutawali. And the data analysis I use here is data analysis and also thematic analysis. I try to use the data triangulation here, where I try to avoid bias. The data analysis is from the document analysis from the existing module that used by the mutawali or the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri, and also the thematic analysis is from the transcribed interview among the 7 mutawali. So what I found here is all the opinion come from the mutawali is actually the knowledge related to the facilities management. So the current training module is only focused to the challenges to the legal part of law and also the Sharia part. It's not talking about how to sustain, how to the life cycle of the building. So this is the FM I try to embed here, and also the Islamic principle of the amanah and ihsan, and also the accountability. So based on the finding here is we found that the first is to perform the roles based on the competencies. But the competencies here is we have to embed on the first is facilities management knowledge, but we try to propose to reinforce the Islamic principle and also the Maqasid Sharia. By performing this, we believe that towards the achieve the sustainable wakaf asset performance. So basically the conclusion here is we found 9 components of facilities management epistemology comprised of the strategic alignment here, the performance-based framework, integration by engineering and also the business, use of information technology in terms of accountancy, community and beneficiary engagement, sustainability and productive management, ethical and business, and also sustainable tenancy management. By practicing this or embed these elements of FM towards the module, the establishment of the module training, we believe that we can solve the issues of underdeveloped properties and mismanagement of the wakaf assets. By not compromising in terms of the integration of the Islamic principle and Tahodi concept and also Maqasid Sharia and additional component to the development of the module. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Ashad, for that presentation, talking about the training of our religious experts, so to say. Any questions or comments from other participants there? Oh, is there a question? Yes, before the question.
Maqasid Sharia. By performing this, we believe that towards the achieve the sustainable wakaf asset performance. So basically the conclusion here is we found 9 components of facilities management epistemology comprised of the strategic alignment here, the performance-based framework, integration by engineering and also the business, use of information technology in terms of accountancy, community and beneficiary engagement, sustainability and productive management, ethical and business, and also sustainable tenancy management. By practicing this or embed these elements of FM towards the module, the establishment of the module training, we believe that we can solve the issues of underdeveloped properties and mismanagement of the wakaf assets. By not compromising in terms of the integration of the Islamic principle and Tahodi concept and also Maqasid Sharia and additional component to the development of the module. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Ashad, for that presentation, talking about the training of our religious experts, so to say. Any questions or comments from other participants there? Oh, is there a question? Yes, before the question is asked, I just want to ask, the training of the mutawalis, is it very formal now or informal?
Currently, the practice of training is conducted by the Department of Wakaf, Zakat and Haji. And the training is not actually formal training. It depends on the state Islamic Religious Council. And since all the 14 states in Malaysia has different enactment of wakaf, so there is no standardization of the wakaf training. That's why we try to propose the module. So the module can, in the process of development, so the Jauhar or Department of Wakaf, Zakat and Hajj will enforce this type of training towards all the mutawali in Malaysia.
Okay, that means that the training first needs to translate from informal to formal.
Yes.
Kind of. And the implication is that a curriculum will have to be developed.
Yes.
I hope you are working towards that.
Yes.
And eventually maybe to find a way of integrating these into maybe some form of formal education. Because I was going to ask again, what is the educational background of the mutawalis that were interviewed in terms of formal education? Because there must have been some kind of formal education that they had.
Yes, normally the current mutawali is from the background of Sharia, social science, and also accountancy. But they are not focusing to the built environment knowledge, the component of managing, maintaining, and also sustaining the property in terms of the investment part, and so on and so forth. That's one. That one is in line with the roles of the mutawali, where they are actually responsible to manage, maintain, and also to enhance the value of the properties. Not only manage the current condition of the property, but they have to think forward, how to invest, how to enhance the value in terms of doing the investment or in terms of the portfolio and so on and so forth, so forth. Prof.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just, are there any questions or comments from the audience? I was just thinking about the different facility management topics that are to be integrated into their training. And I was thinking that, is it possible to evaluate the effect of each of these topics or titles or subjects in facility management, the effect that it will have on perhaps the performance of mutawalis? I guess that will go into the area of simulation and the likes, to really know what are the likely effects that it will have. Anyway, while saying that, let me ask, what is the next stage in this study for you?
Sorry, Prof. Can you repeat the last sentence?
Okay, that now that you have done this idea of embedding facilities management into mutawali training, what is the next stage of the research that you want to do?
This is actually the first stage of my research. So we found out that 9 components of facilities management knowledge to be a part of the training. And actually the second part is we try to develop a module for the training. And so the same module, the standardization module can be used under the Jauhar and under the ministry, the department, for the training, continuous training of the mutawali. The long term, the main aim is to towards the professionalism of the mutawali. Because in Malaysia we have various types of mutawali. There is a government mutawali, basically the Majlis Agama Islam Negeri. They have institutional, and also they have corporate of mutawali. So by establishing the module training, the same module can be used from the various level of the mutawali.
All right, thank you very much for this presentation. Even as we look forward to these next stages of your study in the forthcoming conferences. Any researcher involved in this study?
Sorry, again.
I said, is there any foreign researcher involved in the study? Anybody that is outside of Malaysia that is involved in the study?
You mean the same study but from a different country, is it?
No, is any co-researcher?
Co-researcher. Co-researcher is from Dr. Hidayat is from Polytechnic of Bandung, Indonesia. So
okay.
The function, the contribution of the Dr. Hidayat is in terms of the accountability and also the financial part. Since Dr. Hidayatullah is the chartered accountant, so the
All
contribution
right.
is towards the business aspect.
Is the person online?
No, sorry, Prof. Actually,
all right. Thank you very much for that. It's facility management knowledge into Mutawali training. So we'll take the next presentation by Ikram Duku.
Hi.
I think this is from Morocco also.
Yes.
Decolonizing Women's Rights, a case study of Batik International French-Moroccan partnership. So you have 10 minutes.
All right. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very
Okay.
clearly.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, you can put it in total presentation mode.
Oh, yes.
Mm.
All right. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Today,
Good morning.
I'll be presenting my research titled Decolonizing Women's Rights, a case study of Batik International's French-Moroccan partnership. This paper is under the supervision of Professor Fatemzora Iflahan. And by the way, my name is Ikram, and I'm a doctoral student from Qadiyat University. So before going to the table of contents, I would like to give a short introduction. So this research explores how international NGO partnerships operate in post-colonial contexts, specifically in the field of women's rights and gender-based violence. So more precisely, I focus on the collaboration between a French NGO, Batik International, and Moroccan organizations through the Karama project launched in 2018. Karama in Arabic, or the translation of Karama is an Arabic word, and in English it means dignity. So the key question guiding this study is, do these partnerships empower local actors, or do they reproduce forms of dependency and unequal power relations? So here is a quick overview of the table of contents. So to answer this, I rely on decolonial feminist theory. This perspective challenges dominant Western feminist models that often claim to be universal, but do not reflect the realities of women in the global South. Instead, it emphasizes three key ideas. First, it critiques Eurocentric feminism, which tends to impose external solutions without considering local contexts. Second, it questions the NGOization of feminism, where international fundings and structures can create new forms of dependency and control. And third, it highlights intersectionality and local agency, meaning that gender inequality cannot be separated from colonial history, class, and race. So overall, this framework pushes us to ask who defines women's rights and whose knowledge counts. So the case study, now I'm going to talk briefly about the case study. So Batik International is a French NGO founded in 1998. It works on women's rights, social inclusion, and specifically the fight against gender-based violence. And through the Karama project, it collaborates with local NGOs in Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. The project focuses on three main areas: providing support services to survivors, services like legal, services psychological or medical. It also promotes economic reintegration and conducts awareness and advocacy campaigns. What makes this case interesting is that it combines international funding with local implementation. So the projects are implemented in Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt, but they're funded from a French international agency. So the methodology to study this partnership, I used a qualitative approach based on 3 methods. First, I conducted semi-structured interviews with key actors, including the director of Batik International and the Karama project manager, which are French workers or stakeholders of the French NGO. And second, I carried out a document analysis, examining internal reports and partnership agreements. And third, I used participant observation during my internship within Batik International, which allowed me to assess and observe everyday interactions and decision-making processes within the NGO. So this comparison helped me understand both the official structure but also the lived reality of the partnership between the Moroccan local NGOs and the French NGO. So the research objectives, the main objectives of this research are to examine Batik's role in promoting women's rights in Morocco, to analyze how partnerships navigate post-colonial power dynamics, and to assess whether these collaborations reinforce or challenge neo-colonial structures. The research questions, this leads to 3 central questions. The first question is, how does Batik engage with the local feminist movements? What challenges emerge in this partnership? And importantly, does this model promote autonomy or dependency? So moving on to the findings, first, the partnership shows strong coordination in communication, regular follow-ups using tools like WhatsApp or emails allow continuous interaction and adaptation with the Moroccan NGOs. Second, Batik provides capacity building and technical support to their partners, and local NGOs, meaning that local NGOs receive trainings in project management, advocacy, and intervention strategies, especially in addressing this matter of gender-based violence. Third, the project is based on collaborative design. So the Karama project, or the Karama framework, was co-created with Moroccan NGOs, which helps ensure that it reflects somehow local realities rather than imposing external assumptions or models. And finally, there is a strong emphasis on financial transparency and accountability, which helps maintain donor trust and organizational structure. So overall, we see genuine efforts towards partnership and support. However, the study also reveals important challenges. So the first major issue is the heavy administrative burden placed on Moroccan NGOs. They must comply with international reporting standards that do not always match local systems. For example, financial documents required by French donors may not exist in the same format in Morocco. And I've seen an example of that. This creates delays, confusion, and additional workload, of course. The second challenge concerns decision-making and funding constraints. So donor priorities often dictate the type of interventions, the type of activities and actions, limiting the ability of Moroccan local NGOs to respond to urgent or locally specific needs. And additionally, delays in fund disbursement can slow down critical actions, especially in cases of gender-based violence where timing is very essential. So despite the collaborative framework, there is still structural imbalances. So in short, the partnership promotes support and learning, but it does not fully escape dependency and bureaucratic control.
Ikram,
Yes?
I think you have less than 3 minutes more.
Okay, I'm about to be done. So these findings have several implications. They suggest that international NGOs need to move towards more flexible and trust-based partnerships rather than just rigid control mechanisms. They also highlight the importance of integrating local feminist knowledge instead of relying on imported models. And however, this study also has limitations. It mainly reflects Batik's perspective with less direct input from the Moroccan NGOs. It focuses on a single case study, which limits generalization, of course, and it does not include interviews with beneficiaries. So moving to the recommendations in conclusion. Based on this, we have proposed three main recommendations. First, increase financial independence of local NGOs by diversifying funding sources. Second, strengthen local governance and community participation to ensure long-term sustainability. And third, promote more equitable partnerships where local actors have real decision-making power. And so to conclude, this study shows that while partnerships like Batik can support local NGOs, they still operate within structures shaped by global inequalities. And so to end, decolonizing women's rights is not only about changing discourse, but about transforming power relations, funding systems, and decision-making processes. Thank you so much for your attention, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you for that presentation that looks
Thank
at relationships between the colonized and looking at towards decolonizing again relationships, in terms of NGOs, non-government organizations in Morocco. Any question or comment for Ikram on this? While we're looking forward to that contribution, I'll quickly ask, one of your recommendations talks about more equitable North-South partnerships. I just want to ask, what is the local capacity of the partners, local partners in Morocco? What is their capacity like, in terms of resources, in terms of training, human and otherwise, so there can be more equitable partnership truly?
Yeah. Well, we have different types of NGOs in Morocco, I would say. We have local associations that are very small, and they're in neighborhoods, but we also have big NGOs that have pretty much a good sourcing or funding sources, like the ministry. However, there is one the only difficult or the only challenge that both NGOs would, or I don't know, I would rather say NGOs and associations face, is that fundings, the fundings still come from Western countries, especially, for example, from Western countries. And speaking from my experience in my internship in France, a lot like Expertise France, it's a huge agency that funds. They fund. I don't know, but they focus on countries like Morocco, like Egypt, like Tunisia, like Vietnam as well. They fund a lot of associations that work on this matter of gender-based violence. So even though we might find associations in Morocco that could ask for funding from local funding from ministries, for example, they would still need international funding. And you would find, like, every association that I've been part of, or that I've done an internship in, there's always at least one international a donor. So for the moment, I don't know. They have, well, they have limited capacity, I would say, to be funded nationally, only nationally.
Only nationally. So
Yeah.
the implication is that finance is very critical in this
Yes.
so to say relationship between the foreign
Yeah. And
and the
money
local
is power, and
partners.
yeah.
Money is power, just like elsewhere. Then I I want to ask again. Okay, you didn't talk about your methods, your analytical methods for the data that you obtained. Can you give us some insights into some of the ways in which you analyze the data? How long were you on internship with the?
4 months.
Okay, 4 months. All right, all right. So in
4
what ways
months.
did you analyze your data? Mm.
Well, I used semester. I was very ethical, let's say. Batik International was already aware that I've been working on an article, the content that I was going to do an analysis of their partnership in a very non-biased way, as much as possible, of course. And so I used semi-structured interviews. And in order to conduct interviews, you need to let the interviewee, you need to make him aware of what that interview is about. So of course they were aware about that, and I conducted semi-structured interviews with the Batik International Director, as well as the Karama project, because within Batik, they have a lot of projects. And the project that mainly works on gender-based violence is Karama project. So I reached out to the project manager. And then, of course, I've conducted documents because I was doing an internship, but the internship was not only about this article or this analysis. I've also been part of the partnership, conducting, for example, economic or financial follow-up with the Moroccan partnerships, checking the documents that they send, making sure, since I'm Moroccan, making sure that, well, equalizing or sort of closing that gap between the different the different papers or the different models of documents that the French donors ask, but at the same time Moroccans do not have in the same format. So I've been part of that. So document analysis was kind of, because I was not only documents that I didn't have, I was analyzing documents that I worked on as well or checked somehow. And then, of course, yeah, and all of that, and of course, participant observation, check-in. Well, I was in the loop of their emails with all the partners, the Tunisian, Egypt, Moroccan partners, but I focused on the Moroccan partners, of course. I was part of their reunions or meetings, so it was the collecting data was easy. The analysis was a little bit challenging, let's say.
Challenging. Okay, so it was a
Comparing,
combination
yeah.
of many things:
Triangulation,
content,
yes.
thematic. Did you use any software
No,
for any
it was
analysis?
manual.
Okay, it was
It
manual.
was very
Okay,
manual.
wonderful. So, are there any other comments or questions for Ikram on this very challenging study in terms of analysis, that involved really qualitative, subjective analysis? Well, if there are no other comments, so what's the next stage in this work?
Oh, the next stage in this work would be to check the local NGO's perspective, see what they think about this, about the results. Are they satisfied with the partnerships? Do they face any challenges? Either to confirm the challenges that I've been able to extract, or maybe I was wrong. Who knows?
All right, we look forward to your update in the next conference. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to take the next presentation, which is paper 9, RE001. Is Puteri there? Mayambaja.
Yes, she's here.
Oh, okay. The housing paradox, a comparative analysis of Malaysian and Spain policies.
Oh.
All right. Can you hear me, Prof?
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So generally, just a quick overview of what our studies is about. So we actually investigated the fundamental contradictions in housing systems. So where we see the housing shortages coexist with unsold and also vacant units, and how housing affordability is actually reframed to what we call it a systemic issue rather than isolated supply problem. So in general,
Ke bawah.
Alright. So housing is a fundamental human need and also a key pillar of social and economic stability. So however, there's this what we call it the housing crisis paradox. For instance, in the European Union, more than 30 million vacant dwellings were reported in 2021. And also in Malaysia, we could see in the news a large number of completed but unsold units. Generally, most we could find in the high-rise development. And these issues is actually what we call it exacerbated by housing affordability pressures caused by rapid urbanization and also rising inequality. So all of these concerns actually suggest that housing systems should not be seen as a linear market, but should be understood as a complex and adaptive urban systems shaped by multi-interconnecting forces. So the aim of the study is actually to investigate systemic paradoxes in housing provision in Malaysia and also Spain, where we identify the structural contradictions in housing supply and also housing affordability. And we look at the housing dynamics and we compare it between Malaysia and also Spain, and we explore the potentialities of anticipatory and system-informed approaches to address these challenges. So as to the literature review, so we actually embark into three main criteria. So the first is actually the housing crisis, which should not be seen as in isolation, but as a structural condition due to capitalism, pro-development policy agendas, and also inequality. So this housing crisis creates a persistent mismatch, what we call it, between policy responses and also the housing needs. Next, we move into the housing paradox framing, where we could see the recurring tensions, generally ranging from availability versus affordability, to house price versus income, and also urban densification versus infrastructure. So here we could see that housing crises emerge from interacting structural, financial, and also spatial causes. And finally, we look at the speculation and also market dynamics. And in here, we could see that short-term speculation actually intensifies price volatility and also distorts housing access. So considering that housing crisis is understood as a complex systemic phenomena, we have seen that strategic foresight is pretty much very underdeveloped or unexplored. So our study applies the comparative, qualitative, and documentary analysis, where we're looking into three main stages. So the first is actually on the data collection, where we focus on primary sources, such as government statistics, policy documents, and also secondary sources ranging from academic literature to analytical studies. From here, we move into the analytical procedure. So all the data collected, we analyze it, and we diagnose the situation, what we call it situation diagnosis, and we extract it into two main parts. So first is actually the extraction of the domain. So the domain here refers to the what we call the concentrations of the tensions within the housing system. And this domain is actually being categorized into a few categories, so ranging from market to financial to governance. And also there's another aspect that we look at, what we call it the structural contradictions dimensions, which refers to the tensions that we could see in the housing system itself. So
So these structural contradiction dimension is actually mapped against the domain to produce a comparative matrix structuring, what we call it, process. So this comparative matrix structuring is, it refers to the analytical descriptive, and from here we move into the systemic mapping to identify the interdependencies, interconnections between the structural contradictions and also the domains. So from all of these, we move into the comparative analysis, where we try to identify the recurring systemic patterns, the housing dynamics between Malaysia and also Spain. So based on the findings, we actually categorize it into three aspects. So first is actually the Malaysian case study, and then we move into the Spain case study, and also the comparative, what we call it, comparisons between Malaysia and Spain. So for both the case studies, we look at structural mapping and also the systems mapping. So for Malaysia, right, so we have identified 6 structural contradiction dimensions. So ranging from affordable price versus household units to speculative product versus habitation needs. And when these structural contradictions actually map against the relevant domain, the 6 relevant domain from financial economy to governance and policy, so the extraction highlights that the highest intensity of tensions occurs within the financial, economic, market structural, and also the household domains. And when we map it into what we call the systems mapping, so the narrative in this systems mapping actually portrays a financial imperative which drive the speculation of high-rise development, so often in peripheral areas. So this has caused or created spatial disconnection, higher transport burdens, and also reduced livability. So from this system mapping itself, it also shows that as the demand weakens, the oversupply increases, and this further reinforces speculative behavior in the context of housing system in Malaysia. So moving into the Spain case study, now it's interesting to see that Spain actually, what they call it, the findings shows a different dynamics as compared to Malaysia. However, it still portrays a systemic manner. So here, the dominant pressures actually, what they call it, circulated around rising housing prices and also market dynamics, which affect the affordability and also delay home ownership, and also spatial and policy factors. And these spatial and policy factors actually further intensifies the crisis through uneven housing, distributions, vacant units, and also limited social housing. And when we map against the systems mapping, so we could see 3 main system dynamics. So first is actually the short-term rentals versus the long-term housing mobility, where pretty much the profit-driven investment actually drives the short-term rentals, reducing the long-term housing availability. And then after that, we have the demand concentration in the areas, which intensifies affordability pressures, and also the government constraints, which limit the effective supply of housing supply in Spain. So as you can see from all of these what we call it concerns, it forms into one what we call the reinforcing interactions, generating between all these domains, from market forces to spatial pressures and also government limitations. So comparing Malaysia to Spain, so we could see a few common patterns, particularly on the investment-driven pressures and also the policy gaps. But there's one structural, or what we call it, a critical contradiction, or what we call it, critical condition that separates between what we call the findings in Malaysia versus Spain. So in Malaysia, financialization shapes production, which create oversupply and misalignment. Yeah.
Please, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Okay, I'm almost finished. Yeah. So in Spain, the finalization affects allocation, which reduces effective long-term supply. So this suggests, the findings suggest that while the symptoms are quite similar, so both patterns actually differ in terms of the systemic mechanisms. And so these studies actually address the main important or the key takeaway of this actually suggests that housing affordability in Malaysia and Spain is seen as an emerging systemic patterns driven by complex interactions across multiple domains. So we have finance, markets, spatial development, households, and governance. And these, what we call complex interactions, actually suggest or highlight the need for anticipatory system-informed design and policy interventions. And also, in addition to this recommendation, due to the study is based on secondary data, so we recommend for future studies to actually extend to detailed empirical evidence, primary data, spatial mapping, temporary analysis, and multi-level governance perspective. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation, which is on the ever existing housing paradox. And it's very rich in data, very rich in illustration, and goes on to the recommendations, conclusional recommendations. Are there any comments from other conference participants? All right, if there are no comments, I'll say that central to both Malaysia and Spain from the presentation is the matter of governance and policy. And then the mismatch to policy responses. Did the study look into how long some of these policies that led to the manifestations of mismatch, how long they have been in existence, or whether they have changed over time or something?
So actually, okay, the Spain initiatives actually started after the post-crisis, but the data that we actually obtained from the Bank of Spain, particularly, is from the year 2023 to 2025. So we actually look at within that period of time to compare it with the Malaysian context.
Okay, there's actually a time scope for this evaluation. I think that needs to be highlighted or mentioned as part of the presentation. Now, having done this extremely deep analysis, I know that you already have your recommendation. Give us insights into some practical things that could be done in both Malaysia and Spain. Very practical that, politicians can understand. Because the way you have framed this conclusion is still extremely theoretical.
Yeah, so
Yes.
The idea of the study is actually still very conceptual and exploratory. So what we actually recommend is that for us to dig deeper is to actually look at the foresighting part of it. So which means that's the reason why we have this systemic mapping and also the anticipatory positioning. So this is actually part of our recommendation to actually drive deeper because what you mentioned just now in terms of these policies and also what is very, very critical in a way that is actually linked to one another. So there's no specific of how we say that it occurs from one place. It's actually a recurring or reinforcing the feedback loop. So that's the idea of what going to be emphasized in this what we call it our study.
Okay, so where is the futures organization taking the future of this research?
All right, so we recommend for it to actually explore what we call it the strategic foresight. So which means that from the systems again, so we actually look at the strategies not in a linear form. So strategies that allows us to actually map in terms of what we call it from the interrogation between the past and present, and then after that we will look at the what we call the future trends, and to see how the positioning of the housing crisis could actually drive or emerge in the future. So that's actually what we actually emphasize or what we actually recommend.
Okay, that's wonderful. I mean, I think your institution or your small research group is doing a wonderful work, and we look forward to seeing this kind of deep research again at the next conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right, so
We're going to move on to the last paper in this session, which is the urban flood vulnerability, a spatial temporal assessment of the Klang River Basin. Is Rushdie there?
is any of your co-presenter online? I'm not hearing you.
A very good morning to Prof.
Good morning.
My name is my name is I am from Faculty of Environment, University Technology Mara. Okay, today I will be presenting. My title is about urban flood vulnerability, the spatial temporal assessment of the Klang River Basin. So basically, this study focuses on Taman Malaysia Alam Selangor, an area that has experienced recurrent urban flooding due to the intense rainfall, rising water level, low elevation, gentle slope, and rapid urbanization. So the main objective is to examine how urban area change over time and space in relation to their susceptibility to flooding. So this study we use GIS and analytical hierarchy process to analyze geographic data and run vulnerability factor through a structured decision-making framework. So next, urban flood vulnerability, a longitudinal trajectory analysis of Taman Sri Muda. In Taman Sri Muda, urban flooding is not just one-time hazard, but a structurally embedded condition caused by the interaction of monsoon rainfall, river water level, terrain limitation, and urbanization. The area is highly exposed because it is low-lying area and located near to the Klang River Basin. Our results show a clear trajectory from baseline in 2016, peak in 2020, and partial stabilization in 2024. The research gap is that many previous studies are temporarily static, while our study uses longitudinal framework to show how flood vulnerability evolves over the time. So this is the methodology. We use GIS and AcE-Bs framework to assess flood vulnerability in 2016, which is baseline, 2020 pre-peak, and 2024 is post-peak. There were 5 parameters were analyzed, which is rainfall, water level, elevation, slope, and land use and land cover. All the data sets were standardized and reclassified for consistent comparison. Then, AcE-Bs was used to determine the relative importance of each parameter through a pairwise comparison, and the certificate must be below than 0.1. Finally, the weighted parameter were integrated in GIS using weighted overlay analysis to produce the final vulnerability map. This is the first finding: rainfall trend and vulnerability expansion from 2016 to 2024. In 2016, rainfall was lower, so high vulnerability area were more limited. In 2020, rainfall reached its highest level, about 5,500 and very high vulnerability zone. In 2024, rainfall declined slightly, and vulnerability also reduced modestly, but it still remained higher than the 2016 baseline. Second is water level dynamic and spatial patterns from 2016 to 2024. In 2016, higher water level mainly limited to the riverbank areas, so the impact was relatively confined. In 2020, water level reached about 8 meters during extreme rainfall event. This caused the largest inland expansion of high water level zone, especially in the northern low-lying area. In 2024, the most critical water level zone reduced slightly, but high-risk areas still remain the same in the northern part of Taman Sri Muda. Next is environment topography analysis, slope and elevation finding. Much of Taman Sri Muda lies at low elevation with large areas below 5 meters above the sea level, especially in the northern and central part. The study is almost flat with slope gradient ranging from about 0.001 to 0.088 degrees. Because this gentle terrain, runoff moves slowly and water tends to cool and remain lower. Lastly is land use and land cover. In 2016, there were still more vegetated area in Taman Sri Muda. By 2020, the built-up area are expanded, increasing impervious surface and reducing infiltration. In 2034, this urban expansion continued, especially in the central and northern part. This is important because the growth of built-up area increase surface runoff and make flooding more severe. So this is the overall trend from 2016 to 2024. The AcE-B results show that rainfall is the domain factors, followed by water level. At the same time, elevation, slope, and land use and land cover has also strong combined influence. In terms of temperature change, the proportion of very high risk zone increased to 11.08% in 2020 and showing the peak of vulnerability. By 2024, it declined slightly to 9.76%, but this was still higher than 2026. Yes?
You only have 2 minutes more.
Okay.
Don't rush. Let's give you another minute so you'll be able to.
So this is the evolution of flood vulnerability from 2016 to 2024. In 2016, the study area was mostly low to moderate risk, with small and fragmented high risk zone mainly in the northern river adjacent area. In 2020, there was a major expansion of high and very high vulnerability zone. In 2024, a slightly risk contraction from 2020 through the northern high risk cluster remain good. So, this is the conclusion. The research show that flood vulnerability in Taman Sri Muda is not episodic, but structurally embedded into the environment rather than while rainfall is the domain review for flooding, the terrain and land use or land cover are what regulate the spatial resistance of the water. The last one is spatial condition risk. Flood risk is not randomly distributed. It is heavily concentrated in the low-lying northern sector of the area. This study also found an escalation to stabilization pattern. Vulnerability increased from 2016 to 2020, then reduced slightly in 2024, but still remain higher than the 2016 baseline. So the recommendation and future research must certainly prioritize for resilience. Stakeholders must recognize recurrent exposure as a chronic stressor and begin utilizing higher resolution data. And governance implication, policy and management should focus on adaptive spatial planning, stricter land use control, and the implementation of nature-based infrastructure. So that's all for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Nuralia Najida Roshdi, for that presentation, which took a longitudinal approach as before arriving at the recommendations and future research. Do we have any comments for them or any suggestions? Anyway, before that, I see that your research conclusion talks about climatic and land use transformations, you know, and looking at your GIS map, in 2020, when there was the peak, there was more built environment around the river. Now in 2024, if you check your map again, there's even much more built environment than 2020. Just like the 2021 is greater than the 2016 one. Now, was there a particular focus on the effect of the built environment on the vulnerability situation, flood vulnerability? I hope you understand that. What is the effect of the built environment, or was there any focus on land use transformation with respect to the built environment, on the land use, on the flood vulnerability? Because your map shows much more development in 2024 than 2020, and more in 2020 than 2016. I'm just observing.
For the 2020, there were peak flood because of in November, in the December and early January, Malaysian and especially Taman Sri Muda experienced very high rainfall. So and it stabilized for 2024 because of it still have a heavy rainfall, but the government's already
Develop
the area.
Okay.
Anyway, you need to look into that, how the built environment is really affecting the flood vulnerability. And then talking about the future, since you took a 4-year thing, 2016, 2020, 2024, do we have a prediction of what's likely to happen in 2028? Or is that going to be part of your next study or area of future research?
The governments need to take more responsible to the area near to the river.
All right, I just have a suggestion for you that since you're taking a longitudinal approach, and I'm certain that maybe you're taking data almost every year, you know, it's also possible to forecast and then use some predictive analytical modes, you know, to be able to suggest to governments what should be happening, you know, around the Klang River basin. So you'll be telling government ahead of policies to embark on, you know, so as to at least decrease flood vulnerability. So what do you intend to do next? What did you have in mind to do next after this study? Your next research after this study.
What do you plan to do next? What do you plan to do next?
Next time nak buat apa?
After this study.
After study.
Maybe I will expand my research.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I think I've suggested the things that you can do next. Are there any other comments or questions or contributions to this study?
No.
No. If there's none, we'd like to thank every presenter in this very interesting session that's featured very humanistic presentations. And it's the conference is living up to the reputation of the Environment and Behaviour Association. Thank you very much, all the organizers, Professor Yusuf, and the conference director, and everyone that's there. Thanks for doing a great work as usual again.
Okay, can we have a round of applause please for Prof. Babatunde?
Right, freestyle. Linda kena sikit, tak nampak. Right. Okay, right. Thank you very much all. Thank you.
All right.
So
Bye-bye.
we will continue with our tea and also the certificate presentation. So
Thank you.
if you just want to be around.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, hopefully we can also go to Morocco the second time.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Once again, thank you so much, Prof. Babatunde. Okay, hopefully we will see you again. Inshallah. Okay, maybe next time face to face. And thank you also, Maria. Hopefully we will get to do in Spain once again.
This time to go.
Okay, see you at the next conference.
Alright, see you.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, thank you so much to all participants for the second breakout session. Alhamdulillah, we finally done with the all the presentation. Now we will move straight away. Message everyone already have their tea. So Prof is on the way with the certificates. So we will straight away do the certificate presentation. Are you guys okay with that? Yes. Lagi cepat. Dapat lagi cepat lagi.